All right, it's 6:30, so let's kick off this special. 6 o'clock. It is 6 o'clock. I, I'm going to really have to learn that for next fall when it's the permanent time. So again,
Right.
6 o'clock. It's time for our special meeting of Urbana School District 116's Board of Education. Let's have a roll call, please.
Member Jones? Here. Member Baxley?
Here.
Member Langendorf here. Member Staton?
Yes.
Member Hickson? Vice President Exum?
Here.
President Pulowski?
Here, are there any additions, corrections, or modifications to tonight's agenda? Here none. It's now time for citizen statements. If anybody would wish to make a public statement before the board, please fill out a goldenrod sheet in the back of the room and hand it to Lori Johnson. The only one we have so far is from Sherry Sturgman.
First of all, I want to, I don't think I need that. I want to thank you. Oh, you're broadcasting, never mind. I want to thank you all for serving, for running for an election, for serving on this board, and for caring about the children of Urbana. Having lived in Urbana since 1971, I've seen change after change after change after change. And my only conclusion now is we are failing our children. Totally. I understand that there will be a new reading program. The reading program that we have been using for years and years was the focus of a study which found it did not work. And so we have children now first grade through high school who cannot read. And because they cannot read and they could not read early, they started with absenteeism early. They started, once you can't read at the end of third grade, you are pretty much doomed academically. Our scores, I don't know if you're familiar with the scores at the end of third grade. At Preston Williams Elementary School, not one student leaving third grade is at proficient at grade level. At Leo, 23.1, Martin Luther King Jr., 2.2, Thomas Paine, 7.7, Wiley, 11.6, and Yankee Ridge, 6.3. It is no better at the middle school, and I'm sure it would probably be no better at the high school for either math or reading. I understand, I read the paper today, and that's where I'm getting my information from. I knew nothing about, I guess I'm not well informed about what's going on in the schools. But a $30 million sixth grade building because of, and I was told because of violence and overcrowding at the middle school, so we're going to take out the sixth grade. And that it will come out, where will the 30 million or whatever come from? Right now, Illinois is the third highest property tax in the nation. The city of Urbana is in the upper 7% within the state of Illinois. We are not a growing community. Not only do the property taxes for my home go up, my home is evaluated at $255, and I pay $7,800 in taxes. But of course, rentals will go up because the people who own buildings, their property taxes will go up too. And it will become a community that no one will want to live in. We can't afford the property taxes. The schools are not going to get better. The achievement level of our students is what I care about. Are they reaching their potential? And I was appalled, by the way, when in the last school board election, not one candidate ran on the idea of our students achieving their academic potential. Every single person running ran on racial justice, social justice. That doesn't do our kids any good if they can't read, they can't write, they can't add. It will do them no good. And who is hurt the most? Our minority students are hurt the most by what is going on in our schools. So I hope you will consider, if we're spending money, let's get some intensive tutoring which is what I had hoped COVID money would have been spent on, to help our kids with their basics of reading and writing and math, instead of a building, because I won't even go to take out sixth graders into a building because of things that are going on in the middle school. I thank you, but again, I thank you for your service. I know you do care, but I think you've made some terrible mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to make a statement before the board this evening? Hearing none, we're moving on to our single administrative report of the evening, which is on the sixth grade center expansion and the renovation presentation. Scott.
Thank you. I was just reflecting before the meeting. It was about a year ago that this all started. I sat in on a committee meeting to decide, what we were going to do with Wiley. Spent a lot of the summer over there. It was a very interesting discussion, and I think the decision was that, the middle school was the area of most concern, most need, and this was a way to address that need through a sixth grade center. So just a little orientation. This is the existing site. North is to the left on this drawing or this photo. Florida Avenue is on the right-hand side to the south. So this is the proposed new site plan. The addition is to the west of the existing building. Adds on about 30,000 square feet. Couple things I wanted to point out is we've kind of been fighting our budget throughout this project. We've got continued inflation in the construction marketplace, and we have needs to meet the educational program, and we've kept the building as tight as we can and as efficient as we can. And a few things that we wanted, but we bid them as add alternates to the project, which means we don't have to accept those. Only if we have the money, then we'll take those. So add alternate one for our project was a soccer field with a walking path around it. We'll still have the grass there so we can still play soccer, but most of that money is for the walking path. And then alternate number two was we have some existing parking along the two streets, and it's not in great shape, so we had money in there to replace that asphalt paving. But it can last a few more years. So, and then alternates 3, 4, and 5 were some finish upgrades, moving from a waxed tile to a no wax product. On a couple of those. And then our final alternate was a schedule extension. Planning took a little longer than we had hoped, and so the construction schedule is kind of tight. So we just wanted to see what kind of a premium we would pay to get this done by next school year. I think talking to administration, if we don't make next school year, then it's probably a full another year. It's going to be difficult to move kids, in the middle of the year. So, and then let's see. I'm going to go on to the floor plan. So the purple on this plan is the existing building, and the blue area is the addition. Existing building is about 42,000, a little over. And the addition about 30,000 square feet. We did kind of late in design. We've seen the inflation in construction pricing, so we met with the project team late in the design process and actually took out one classroom. We added some operable partitions on the stage so that we could use that for some health classes, similar to what they do at existing middle school. And then we also made a few changes in the band after they got their numbers for the sixth grade band. We needed a little more space in the band room, but they went ahead and they gave up an office space and some music storage space so that we could enlarge that band room for them. So that was just a few of the changes since we talked to you last. Next couple slides are just some aerial views of the project, just to give you some idea of what it would look like. There's kind of a main drop-off canopy similar to the middle school. And then that's the library, which kind of addresses the corner, Florida and Anderson there. So schedule, we're here in toward the end of June. Assuming that we get this approved, construction would start right away and finish up ready for school next year. And the project budget, our budget at schematic design was about 24 million total project, and we're up to about 26 million total project. We did, in the last week since we took bids, we did work with the low bidder, English Brothers, and E.J. Hines is here from English Brothers. We did work with them to see what we could do to reduce costs. And we identified about $425,000 that we could cut out without affecting any of the educational programs. We looked at some items beyond that, but then we started cutting space where we'd have, not have enough space for the educational programs that we need at the sixth grade. So a lot of that is generated by the extracurricular or the band and art and gym and PE, a lot of those spaces, which take some area. So we can get through project down to 25.6, 25.5. And that's kind of where we are on the budget. I think that's it for now. If we got questions that I can answer.
Board members, any questions for Scott?
Scott, what were the items that you did remove that were up to 400,000?
Let me get my list. We made some changes on some of the light fixtures. The electrical contractor suggested a different light fixture, which would be a little more efficient. We deferred some of the theatrical lighting. We made some changes on the metal panel exterior on the building and the soffits. Made a minor change on the glass. On some of the doors, we made some minor changes, and doors and windows. So nothing that really affects much the use of the building or the educational programs in the building. We did look at some larger, like taking off the stage, but that really starts affecting how the building is used. And we looked at the geothermal system, but that saves maybe 800,000, but then we've got tax credits, up to $1 million, we think, on this project. So that doesn't make any sense at all. We actually lose money doing that, so.
The glass on the windows, would that, I know with the middle schools, the teachers sometimes complain the glass is so thin that it lets the air come in. So are you talking about the quality of the glass on the outside windows?
It was just a minor, they're 1-inch insulated glass, which is pretty normal for quality construction. And it has a low-E coating, and it was just a little different low-E coating, which helps reduce the amount of heat you lose at night. reflects the infrared back into the space, so.
So it wouldn't affect the heating, cooling very much?
No, it would be better, and it would be better than what's in the building currently, and, yeah.
Scott, I'm looking at the project budget and a couple things. Looking at the construction contingency line, I remember that most projects, isn't it more than 5%, or is 5% typical nowadays?
We have typically carried 7.5.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
For renovation, or 10 on renovation and 5 on new
Right.
construction. With all the abatement that's been done and the building being open and actually has a lot of holes in it from the abatement, we've been able to really get a good look at it. So we
Okay.
think we're not going to have as many surprises,
Okay.
as many unforeseens on this project. So.
And if you could explain to me, so you've just got 1.4 million in the budget line, but then the low bid has 1.086. So
We originally budgeted that 7.5 that I talked to you about.
I see. Okay.
And
Now
I've reduced it to 5 based on our comfort level
I
with the
see.
existing building.
So is okay. Okay, that helps.
And sure.
Yeah, this is being broadcast.
Again, I'm RJ Hines, President of English Brothers. On the contingency, I would like to add that we are finishing a project at Northeast Elementary School in Danville. Very similar scope. The addition's a little smaller, but we're done with it. There will be no more changes, and we came in about 2% for change order contingencies. If that makes you feel better.
It does. That helps.
Yeah, most of our projects, we see 2 or 3% on contingency, but then typically what we've done, we've used that to pick up some of these alternates or things we've cut that we'd like to add back in late in the project. So,
Well, it's better to be surprised on the one way than the other. So
yeah.
Can I ask a question again? The contingency you're talking about, you built in 2 to 3% extra money just in case something bad happens.
5.
And we need more money. Okay, and so, and it's less because we've already done all the asbestos work.
Yeah, and the building's not occupied, so we had a good chance to get in there and look at things and, tear things apart if we needed to find out what's there. So we
Yeah, most-
anticipate less unforeseens
Many
since
of
we've
the
had that opportunity.
unforeseens that happened with Thomas Paine were asbestos related. Like, as they got in and started doing things, they found sections that had hidden asbestos that we didn't know about. And because the building has basically been gutted and is without asbestos right now, and lots of other things have been removed, like plumbing, and there's a lot lower risk of those unforeseen things happening.
Yeah, we're very comfortable, given the fact that we've been through there multiple times and it has been unoccupied. Very comfortable with the project. There won't be many unforeseen, if any, issues come up. So
And the nice thing about that is that $900,000, then when we get toward the end, all those things that Scott was talking about at the beginning that we're putting in as alternates, like the walking path and soccer and things like that, we can begin to add those things back if we get to the point where we have, not touched that money very much.
All right, any other questions? I mean, I do have a question about financing. So but I don't know if Carol's gonna be able to help us with this or not.
She's been studying.
I can try.
So, I mean, we were already doing some interest-only payments for a number of years before we would start making principal and interest payments. So, with the additional spend of approximately $2 million on this, if we went forward on it and had to buy bonds for, at a higher dollar figure, in terms of like overall cost, in terms of the cost of the loan, how much extra are we going to end up paying in that?
Well, I'm referring back to the presentation, I think that was made in April, with Katie
Yeah.
and Stiefel. And, because I did email Ann today just to make sure that we were good with this as far as financings as well, since it was 2 million over. And she referred me back and sent this to me and said, you know, we did plan on potentially a 20 million or 24. I'm sorry, 20 or 23 were the two proposals that
Yeah.
they gave. And with the 23 million, it looks like it's about, the total debt service, and you're looking at this too, Paul.
Yeah,
Goes from about 25.8 to about 30.6.
yeah,
So with 3 million extra in financing.
okay. And the term increases
It's
2
only by
years?
2 years, yeah.
Okay,
And just to clarify, this does not increase property taxes. This is all sales tax related, so this is, since we passed that facility sales tax 2007 maybe, way back when. We've had that 1% sales tax that everybody in Champaign County is paying. That money that we're getting in is about 4.5 million a year now. And that money is used, since it's a dedicated revenue source going into the future, that is the money that is used to pay for these bonds.
we get about $4.5 million a year from that tax, and it's exclusively used for facilities.
Yeah. And about a third of that, I mean, as the board, when we passed the sales tax back, when we agreed to, you know, back that sales tax back in that time, the board made a resolution that they would use part of that money to keep our facilities up. I mean, that's one of those things that we hadn't done for a long time because we didn't have a dedicated revenue source to put towards our facilities, and if we had something go wrong, we had to go out for referendum. We don't have to do that anymore because now we have this facility sales tax that actually helps pay for these bonds, and it can only be used for facilities, for bricks and mortar. So,
And
Just wanted to
33%
clarify that.
is the third, so the
Yes.
board, so 33% is of our facilities.
yeah,
sales
of that
tax
money we get in sales tax, the board had dedicated originally to put a third towards our current debt service, paying that off, which we've already done. But the other third went to bonding for future debt, and then a third for pay-as-you-go projects. So it's money we get in that if we have paving that we need to do, or, you know, smaller projects, we have that money we're able to use for those building-type projects and not have to go out and, you know, do bids or any, I mean, we may have to do bids, but we use it for the smaller type projects that come up over the year.
Yeah. But once the legacy property tax funded building bonds were paid off early, that
It's now
payment went toward the
debt service.
debt service, yeah.
Yes, correct.
So originally, when we started this in 2009 or whatever, right, it was one third, one third to pay down property tax-based building debt that went basically for the Leal refurbishment back in the day. We put a third of the money towards that, and we paid that off like 2 years early. So everybody's property taxes actually went down that year, and that was only a couple of years ago. A third of it went to pay for the stuff we borrowed back in 2009, which was like the high school athletic field, the Cobb Auditorium, King renovations, early childhood school, that stuff, right? And then a third of it was for pay-as-you-go projects, you know, as we went along. And but once we paid off that Leal debt early, we suddenly had, you know, a third of the revenue stream to reallocate. It was reallocated to help pay for the stuff we had borrowed for in 2009, which is the athletic field, Cobb Auditorium, that kind of stuff.
So that means we'll be able to pay off the athletic field more quickly.
Well, that was all planned when that was originally borrowed. So that payment schedule was kind of pre-computed. Thanks to Carol. She did all the number crunching on that. But and those are due to be paid off not too much further, like 5 years, I think.
I don't have that in my head right now.
But I think
Sorry.
that's about right.
Yeah. Been away too long.
Yeah. And we typically, when we borrow for these projects, it's in the tune of like 10 to 12 years. This is a fair amount longer.
I think,
You know.
actually, that was mentioned when this was presented in April as well, and I think bonds that we have now, the district's last 3 large bond issuances have been about 17. The 2010 bonds were 17 years. The 17 bonds were 14 years, 8 months, and the 21
Yeah.
bonds were 15 years.
I guess this is comparable.
So, yeah, it's a little less.
A little less, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all right, sorry. And any other questions?
I was gonna add one thing to note, when we met with Scott today to kind of talk about some of those areas. We also looked at current payments that we've already, things that we've already, that are part of this project that we've already taken care of. And it was about 1.5 million, that we've already paid in the demo and the, rental work that's already happened at Wiley. Like the asbestos abatement mostly. You know, when we came to the board, we said it was gonna take about $1 million to abate the building, and that is about what it's cost. So it was about 1.5 million that we've already, taken care of
With
through
our
our
pay-as-you-go,
existing
yeah.
pay-as-we-go money for FY '24. So not future money we've already spent.
Yeah, so of that $26 million budget that Scott's presenting tonight, we've already paid for, out of current funds, $1.5 million.
I
And,
see.
and with some of the things we were able to take out today, we dropped that figure from 26 to about 25.5.
Okay.
With the help of English Brothers, so thank you,
gotcha.
yes.
I've got a couple questions. Do we have projections on the sales tax, any increases over the
Hmm.
next number of years?
That's
I don't currently, yeah, I mean, it's
Sales tax.
sales tax.
sales tax.
That had been flat at $3 million a year for a really long time, with marginal increases until the state started collecting online,
Oh.
basically Amazon.com, et cetera.
Yeah.
Then suddenly it jumped to like 4.5 million. It was a huge windfall for us. Well, Costco helped too, but it was primarily the online sales that we.
But after that, that one big jump, there hasn't been any other big jumps. It's just been kind of steady
It
since
steadily
then.
increases, it doesn't ever decrease, it
Oh,
only,
no,
it only
Yeah,
it's
gets
not
I mean,
higher.
how
decreasing.
it-
I'm
how-
just saying that there was one big jump, and then
I mean-
it's just kind of,
So how the state computes,
Inflation.
how the state computes it, right, is it calculates how much sales tax revenue there is in Champaign County, right, all of Champaign County. And then we look at how many students does Urbana have as a percentage of the total students of the county. So they're like, for example, a district like Heritage, which isn't in Champaign, the building is not in Champaign County, but they do have a few students that live in Champaign County. So that for whatever number of students that live in Champaign County, Heritage gets a check cut for that, right? So if the percentage of students in Champaign County, if Urbana's share of that drops, it would potentially affect that revenue. Or if it increases, it would affect it as well, along with the total number of sales in the county.
And the second question, the electric switch that we authorized?
Switch gear, yep.
Switch gear we authorized, is that price also included, or I would assume so?
I think that was 101.
100 without, yeah.
Yeah, we
I don't know that it's in there, but there's enough fluff in there.
Okay.
yeah. Can't remember if we paid for that ahead of time or not,
Right,
because we
that's
needed that for the
We need to order it.
solar,
We
for
need
the
to order
solar.
I don't think we've paid for it yet.
Okay,
It's on
Because it's
order,
about a
though.
year out, yeah.
that's right.
It's
that's
gonna
right.
take about a year to get
Okay.
here.
There
It's
might be a quick
authorized,
ship option on that, so that's something we're looking at right now, so that might help us get that in a little
Good
earlier.
question, too.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, all right, thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
So we're moving on to our action items. First up is our tentative district budget that was presented a week ago tonight. I guess. Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, you could do it now, or we could, I was planning, I mean, we'll have I think, a time for
Okay.
debate when we actually have the motion on the floor for the bid approval. That's probably a more, that's okay, if that's all right with you? Not trying to control debate, but, Okay, action item, tentative budget. So it was presented to us last week, in the agenda are, a list of, important dates with regards to the, final budget and the tentative budget. So tonight's the request for approval for the tentative budget. It needs to be adopted prior to June 30th by state law. And then in September, we'll have a public hearing on the actual budget. And that's when we have, better numbers on both our revenue and expenses, which needs to be filed before the end of September. Is there a motion for the floor to, approve the tentative budget presented for last week?
I move for approval.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments, questions? I guess I do at this point, real quick. So right now we're reflecting a approximately $2 million deficit going into for the 24-25 academic year. And I know this question was asked last week. I can't remember the top of my head. How does that compare to last year's tentative budget in terms of deficit versus? I can't remember. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have.
Last year was 11 million, but that
I have the sheet.
included,
Oh, that's right. We had
Yeah.
the
The-
payment schedule was off from the county assessor.
last
for the
year
county
was
clerk.
11 million, but that included, some of our property tax, the tentative deficit, but that was
It was total all
because-
funds, though.
It was because of the, yeah, no,
Yeah.
part of it was our payment. We
I guess
received
I guess what I'm trying to get at here, as I have a concern, and this is a concern I had all during negotiations last year, when we agreed to, our teachers deserve those raises. They fought hard for them. I would love to give them higher raises than we gave them, but my concern is that we're entering with a structural deficit with these promised spending increases for salaries. For the 24-25 school year, then the 25-26 school year, plus whatever happens in the next round of negotiations. So I'm really nervous about, are we going to need to spend time next year looking at structural budget reductions?
I can tell you it's probably better answered in September, which is not what you want to hear, but, I mean, that's something that we've done a lot, Paul, as you know. I mean, everything's kind of behind the 8 ball in this business. I mean, you find out you have a deficit in September, you can't do anything about it at that point because you've already hired all your teachers. You have to RIF them by the following March before you even know for sure what the funding's going to be for the following year. So everything is backwards as far as funding and financing schools. But I can tell you after September, there should be if things don't look good, that's what the following year will be done. I mean, we've always spent that time looking at what we can cut in that 24-25 school year, as well as what, obviously, staffing you can't do anything about, which is the biggest expense. But there's other things that we've been able to curtail as far as purchasing that we've done mid-year.
I mean, that's my concern is after September, we're going to be, I'm nervous that there's a strong likelihood we're going to be spending months of our time at this body looking at places to cut for the 25-26 school budget, because I'm worried we're in a structural budget situation.
Well, and things are kind of in flux this year anyway with ESSER ending. So I think there's a lot of that spending that's going to be spent out by September, and then a lot of things are going to be moving around. So it's going to be whether other grants can pick that up. It's until all of that gets settled and we find out what other grants might be able to pick up some of these expenses, we're not going to know.
And we haven't done our year-end closing, because that doesn't happen until June, when we can really see, where we budgeted for full-time teachers, but covered class spaces with subs.
I get-
Or we budgeted this amount for subs
Sure.
and ended up spending, I know last year we budgeted, I don't have that number in front of me, but a significant amount of money for subs that we didn't use, because in many days we couldn't find subs. And so I think once we do our year-end closing is when we typically in the summer sit down and go through those lines and see where we where we have attrition, where we have positions that we had this year that we didn't fill next year. So Carol's right, we're always kind of behind because we have to have this tentative budget to be able to run the district after July 1, but we don't close the year until June 30th.
Yeah.
And
No, I mean,
run
I
all
get
those
it, I've been through this
reports,
before,
yeah.
but that $2 million figure is really making me nervous, that's all.
Yeah,
And, you know,
and
the
there's
other
still a
thing-
lot of unknowns,
Yeah,
right?
and-
We don't have our final EBF allocation. So, this year we were tier 1, which gave us $1 million versus $350,000. And so I think there are other unknowns out there that we kind of have to wait to flush out.
And we're always very conservative in our revenue estimates,
Yeah.
but we always err on the side of caution on the expenditures. So there's a lot we budget for every position that we want to fill. But then, as we'll find this year, as we look at things, we didn't fill a lot of those
No, I
positions.
mean, I've sat through this process before where we've actually carried a negative budget in the September budget, typically in the first year of a contract. But the percentage raises for those particular contracts back in those days were less than, were more like 2%, 3%, not 4.5%. That's what's got me worried, because we're not going to be. I don't think we're going to be getting 5% again next year from CPI. Thank you. Anyway, so I'm rambling now at this point. Anybody have a question for Carol? Motions on the floor to approve the tentative budget. Hearing none, a roll call vote is in order.
Member Staton?
Yeah.
Member Baxley?
Yes.
Member Hickson?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Member Exum?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes, the tentative budget has been accepted and passed. 7.2 is the same thing, but for Urbana adult education. And again, this is basically last year's budget that we're tentatively approving, because that's even more completely up in the air because their grant decisions haven't come through at all. So we're just making guesses at this point. Is there a motion to accept the tentative Urbana adult education budget, which was presented at our last meeting?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, again, a roll call vote is in order.
Member Langendorf, yes. Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hickson? Member Baxley?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes, and
Member Staton?
Sorry, I'm used to being last.
Member Staton?
Yes.
And Vice President Exum?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for following procedure. Last up tonight is our last action item, bid approval for the sixth grade center, total 7 bids. The lowest bid came from English Brothers with a base bid amount of $21,730,000 plus 5% construction contingency. We will have an option, time to debate this, but first we would need a motion to put it on the floor, bid acceptance onto the floor. Is there a motion to that effect?
I move for approval with our lowest bidder, English Brothers, at the base amount listed, plus the 5% construction contingency.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Is now the time for discussion? I know Jennifer would like to talk.
I put a piece of paper in the back for anybody who would like to see it. There are some charts and stuff here that I'm not going to read. I would like to start today, if you'll allow me, by reminiscing the first time I met Carol Baker. And I don't know if you remember, but I was a very brand-new administrator having to administer a budget for the first time. And I was nervous. And Carol said, "Don't worry, Jennifer. If you go over budget, nobody gets mad at you. We just figure it out, and then we deduct a little from your paycheck every month until you make it up." And I went, and I don't know if she did that to everybody, or if she just said, "Oh, this one's going to be good." But anyway, that does kind of bring home brought home to me when I was looking at all of this, and I did remember it, that every time we make a budget cut, we're taking something out of somebody's paycheck, or we're raising the number of kids in their class, or we're asking them to supply more of the materials in their classroom, or something like that. It affects people, and so we have to be very careful about it. And what I worry about is, and I'm not going to read this exactly, but we don't have the money really to open Wiley as an elementary school. I know I fought for that at the beginning. Paul told us that we didn't have the money, and he was right. I don't know where he came, I don't know why he knew that, because, you know, I thought I had followed school district stuff, and obviously not well enough. But he said we didn't have the money, and he was right. And he said at the time we could probably come up with $250,000 for another school, but I can't see doing any more at the time. And looking at the budget and what Paul was just talking about, we are looking at a $2 million possible deficit for next year. Carol's assumptions led me to realize that our increases for the 25-26 school year from both taxes and EAV will be similar to this year, and so will our increased expenses. We will have to come up with the money to pay whatever increase is built into the current contract for unionized teachers and staff, and then we will have to come up with that same percentage increase for the non-union administrative staff. So similar income, similar expenses. Does that mean another $2 million deficit? Who knows? But I don't see us having any extra money for anything. Therefore, I don't think we'll have the $650,000 of excess costs predicted to be necessary for the sixth grade center. I believe that there will probably be additional costs beyond the $650,000, but that's irrelevant because I don't think we have the $650,000. Another aspect of this decision is that we are making a huge decision about borrowing more money. Do we borrow a great deal of money and tie up our facility sales tax receipts for a long time, paying only interest on principal on the loan for 4 years, therefore making us less unable to work on our other buildings, even though improvements in those buildings could help us save money? For example, I've been emailing with Randy Ashman about the cost of utilities in the various buildings. And there's a graph here that shows the buildings that have energy improvement, like geothermal or things like that, and the ones that don't. So when you look at it, I think that we could save significant, not a ton, but significant amount of money by improving the infrastructure for our existing schools. And we won't have the money to improve our infrastructure for our schools as quickly if we go through with borrowing this amount of money. I must admit I don't understand tax caps and how they affect our ability to lower taxes. I had asked Carol about that, but we haven't had time to get together. I would love to be able to lower taxes someday. It is important for Urbana and therefore for our schools, for us to both lower taxes and raise achievement levels. The combination of high taxes and low achievement scores is not a draw for people to move here. I know that we won't be able to lower taxes for a longer time if we vote for this whole package. And we won't have the money to improve our infrastructure, add to our education fund, and improve our academic achievement scores either. According to Randy, money saved by lowering our utility bills would go into the education fund. So what do we do? I think we look carefully at UMS teacher Chuck Kaplinsky's suggestion of an alternative school. Yes, we would take fewer students out of UMS, but we would reduce negative behaviors by more than if we move 1/3 of the students. What would a teacher prefer? 33% fewer students in the school or 80% fewer disruptions? Below are the statistics he sent us in May. What we have been doing is not working for these students. They need more from us. And again, there are numbers here. And basically, it was that 86 students had over 20 referrals out of the 903 total students, and that was 9.5% of the students. And Chuck's email went on to say, although these numbers are likely low in their reflection of student behavior, as many teachers have given up writing referrals when it becomes obvious none of the consequences given to these students is having any effect. Another reason these numbers don't reflect the actual number of infraction is that long-term and regular substitute teachers, as well as TAs, don't have access to the Skyward system to record student behavior and write referrals. So approximately 10% of the students are shaping the environment at UMS, their behavior affecting the atmosphere of the classrooms, making it difficult for the 90% of the students who follow our guidelines to learn and feel safe. The constantly declining test scores since the adoption of the restorative discipline system bears this out. We know that the behavior displayed by this 10% is actually a cry for help. At present, the systems in place at UMS are not meeting their needs. It has never been more urgent than it is right now to consider having an alternative school in USD 116. Our district's Tiger Academy only houses 30 students, 15 from the middle school and 15 from the high school, and is not large enough to meet our needs. The school districts in Rantoul, Danville, and Champaign all have programs like this that have met with great success. An institution like this is designed not simply to address the students' academic needs, but their social and emotional ones as well, by providing help from mental health providers. The statistics I have provided are alarming and will only get worse if we continue with our current discipline and educational system. With the Wiley campus available, this is a prime opportunity to make a bold and necessary move that will benefit the students in the district that are most in need of your help. I hope that you will consider this before making any decisions regarding funding the Wiley 6th Grade Center. My colleagues and I are eager to explore and discuss this possibility with you. And that was the end of his email. I guess I would like to say that at one of our special meetings, we had a student who we didn't feel the school was addressing the student's needs, and the student needed an alternative placement. But there was no alternative placement, so that the student was going to be given homeschooling for a bit. This is not helpful for this. Homeschooling, my daughter had 2 surgeries. In high school, she did homeschooling. It's a teacher comes to your house for an hour a day. Also, since I don't know, I just remembered that like I said, my daughter had 2 surgeries while she was in high school. And at that point, I don't know what they would do now, but at that point she couldn't, because they were surgeries on her feet, she couldn't take PE for long months. So they put her in, they didn't know what to do with her, so they said, okay, you can go to detention. So she sat in detention a good portion of the 2 school years. And she came home and she said, I don't know why they call those the bad kids. Those are really nice kids. They are so helpful, and when I see them in the hallway, all they can say is, hi, Deb, how are you? And I think it's because she met them in a place where actually they felt comfortable. And they felt comfortable with her, and she felt comfortable with them. And so a smaller place where kids are not brought up against situations that they're not good at handling, or where people can help them handle those situations more easily. I just think it might be more humane for them and would give them better outcomes. But anyway, to go back, this is now me talking. An alternative school will not need the entire Wiley campus, even the old footprint of the campus. I suggest that we put central office there and save ourselves the rent we currently pay to MTD. That savings can also go into the education fund to help bring up our academic achievement. I floated this idea to Paul, Angie, and Katie. They didn't think it was a terrible idea, but they didn't support it either. Paul said that the district had hoped to get central office back in downtown Urbana on a bus line so that it would be more accessible to people without cars. Great idea, but that is out of reach right now. We need to begin tightening our belts now before we are in an even worse position. There is a sentence in the tentative budget assumptions that I like. No new expenditures will be added to the budget unless the source of revenue or decrease in expenditure is identified. And Carol told us last week that that was put in there by Tina Gonzalez. I emailed Tina and asked her about it. And she said to me, Jennifer, do you remember all those budget cutting meetings we had? They were horrible. They were painful. And I know that as the administrator for the multicultural program, it got us in trouble with the state. We had to have a huge meeting with the state about the fact that we didn't have enough teachers serving our English language learners at the high school. Those were really, really, really painful. So I support that sentence being in the budget. So if we are going to plan to spend $650,000 more than we are already committed to spend for 25-26, because the contract is a commitment. And whether we pay administrators in line with that contract, that is not a commitment. That is already made, but that's been what we have done. So, if we are going to plan to spend $650,000 more than we are already committed to spend for 25-26, what will we cut? We cut elementary this year. We made class sizes higher at a time when students and teachers are struggling. I don't want to do that again. We will have to look for something to cut. So what do you think that cut should be?
Thank you. Sherry, you want to go ahead?
I'll start off. This board has already voted on and decided we're going to have a sixth grade center.
Mm-hmm.
That was decided last October. And there were many reasons why. And I too think that an alternative program would be good for students. But if we take the sixth grade students out of there, we'd have a lot of space and resources there for those students. Just because they're taken out and put into a building, that doesn't mean that they're going to have resources. What would the staffing be? They would need special staff as well. Did you consider how much that would cost versus the $650?
Of course, I can't figure that out.
That's
but
right.
it would
So
be
we
a
didn't
much
know.
smaller staff
We don't know
than
because
300.
we don't know because we haven't figured that out as far as specialty. They'd still need the science labs. They'd still need the stage. They'd still need a gym. They would need everything we have to renovate the whole building for them, plus renovate it for all the offices as well, and those are very specific needs as well. I do appreciate the fact that somebody brought that to our attention, that it was an alternative program, but I don't want to take students out and isolate them in another program when they can hopefully be, have work or have the support so that they can eventually participate in all the classes and all the extracurricular things so that they could have a full experience there as well. And I think that if you take the students out of that program, then they'll have a different program and it won't be a middle school program. So I think that we can do that in a different way.
Of course, an alternative school is not a permanent placement. It never is.
Thank you, Sherry. Anybody else? Going once. I guess I'm planning on voting no on accepting the bid. I wish this were October 1st and not June 26th. I'm too nervous about the 25-26 budget, and I know it's way early. I'm concerned that we're going to set ourselves up in a structural way. Yes, we did vote, and I voted in the majority to plan for making Wiley to be a 6th grade center. But there's two things I didn't know at the time. One was that the operational cost of the facility, we're going to increase our budget by around 600 instead of around 200. And the other one was that the overall capital costs were going to be higher than we were estimating at that point in time. That's enough of a difference here for me to change my vote.
You were also involved in the other renovations, and you feel differently now because of the fact that the costs in the educational budget will be higher, that you don't know how you're going to address those? Because that money that we're borrowing can't be used for anything else. It can only be used for facilities.
Correct. I'm more concerned, frankly, about the operational budget than I am about the overruns on the capital side, because we're relatively capital fund rich and operational budget poor in general.
So if we don't approve this today, that means there's no way that we would be able to fund and start a 6th grade center by the next school year. If we wait until October or whatever to approve it, the school won't be done then. So we'll have the same
That's
we'll have
correct.
the same problems for 2 years, 2 more years in the middle school, where we have 300 kids in the cafeteria.
That's correct. Anyone else? If there's no one else, a roll call vote is in order.
Vice President Exum.
Yes.
Member Baxley.
No.
Member Langendorf, yes. Member Staton. Member President Pulowski.
No.
Member Hickson.
No.
Member Jones.
Yes.
I didn't catch what Member Stanton voted. Okay, so it passes 4-3. Thank you to English Brothers. You guys did work at my church and did a fantastic job. I have no doubt that you're going to do fantastic work here as well. There's nothing else on our agenda, so the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move for adjournment?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll see you all on August 6th.